Okay, so now we are going to talk about restricted random sampling. It's still random, but it's restricted. Why is it restricted random sampling? Okay, that's a very good question. We need to understand the fact that now we are dealing with heterogeneous data. What is the difference between a homogeneous and a heterogeneous data? A homogeneous data is a particular set of data which is kind of similar. Whereas in a heterogeneous data, the data is very deviated. Okay? You can't really do a simple random sampling here because the data has its own uniqueness. So you need a heterogeneous data for this type of sampling, but at the same time, you need a particular ways to calculate it. One is stratified. There is stratified data. Then there is what was the another one? Seriously, what was the another one? What was the another one? Systematic. Why do I keep forgetting this one? Systematic. And the third one is cluster. Also called the multi-station. So basically, there is the stratified data, there is the systematic data, and the third and the last is the cluster data. So the stratified data is basically a representation of when the large chunk of data is being stratified into different portions. For example, if we are taking into consideration of all the students of the country or all the students of a state, first we will take into consideration the universities, then we will take into consideration the colleges, then we will take into consideration the schools. So basically in a stratified data, the whole data is being divided into stratas. What are stratas? Stratas are basically the subgroups of the original group. So first we were dealing with the topic called education, and then we divided that factor of education into different portions called universities, colleges, and schools. Why did we do that? Because we need our data to be random, because still in a university people would have different viewpoints and different ways of converting their viewpoints. Colleges would have the same, schools would have the same, but this, for example, in a university, the people would have a heterogeneous opinions about homogeneous stuff. If you are in a geography field, you would think about heterogeneous things, but the homogeneity is that you are in geography. So that is what universities are. Then is the colleges, and then is the school. So this is basically a subgroup formation of the group's original group, which was education at the very first initial. Now, next thing that we are going to talk about is the systematic one. Why the systematic one? So in a systematic data, things are a bit different. In a systematic data, there are a particular set of systems. Okay, so stratified data have very good pros and cons, I would say. Stratified data is like, the biggest pro of a stratified data is that it is very effective. It is very effective, the administration is easy, and like the data is very accurate. The accuracy of the data increases. But the demerit of the stratified data is you need every single data. It's very difficult to calculate every single data of a strata and have every single stratified definitions. So that was the stratified data. Now let us talk about what is a systematic data. In a systematic data, it's very different. For example, this goes on through a formula called k equals to n divided by n. Why? So in this formula of k equals to n divided by n, basically says that k is basically the interval, n is the total universe, and this n basically defines the number of gaps or the number of students to consider, basically the sample. Why did we do that? So, for example, if we have the value of, okay, so that you have seen the formula, it's k equals to large n divided by small n. Now, example, if n equals to 100 and n equals to 10, then k equals to every tenant population would be taken into consideration. Why is it good? So basically, first you would have the number 1 person, then after that you would have the 11th person, then you would have the 21st person, then the 31st person. So basically, if there are 100 row numbers, you take into consideration 1, 21, 31, 41, 51, and so on. This process is good because this has no personal biasness and it's very easy to calculate on a very big chunk of data. But the demerit is you can't really do much with this data because the problem with this data is that you can't really work on this data at a very bigger level. The problem it faces is that similar kind of data might be collected. If the row number 1 is a girl, row number 2 is a girl, row number 1 is a girl, row number 11 is a girl, row number 21, 31. By any coincidence this happens, you just have the data of females, you would not get the data of males. So this is a good random sampling, but at the same time, it does not work. Okay, so now that we are done with this, systematic data was a bit different. I defined the whole thing that was the cluster or the multi-stage data, okay, so I did a bit of a mistake. That was the cluster or the multi-staged one. So stratified is stratified is somewhat different. Stratified is when there are proportional groups and there are non-proportional groups. If there are proportional groups, there are equal and proportional representation given to any individual, but in a non-proportional group, every individual is given the same. What can be an example of a proportional and a non-proportional group? It's very simple, guys. Very simple. If you can't answer this, it's very big a shame of you. Because example of proportional groups is like in a classroom. In a classroom, every single one is given an equal opportunity of same individualism. But voting rights, non-proportional can be voting rights. Even though you're from a caste, you're from a creed, you're from this or that, still are given the equal representation in a voting line. So this is the example of a non-proportional example. So thus we are done with the simple random sampling, or basically random sampling, which has two types. Let's just discuss about everything once again. It's very easy though. Very easy. Very easy. First we discussed about what is sampling. Why do we do sampling? We do sampling because of the fact that we can't take into consideration of every single effort. Then we discussed about simple random sampling, which has two parts. Number one is lottery. Number two is table of random numbers. Then we talked about non-random sampling, or basically restricted random sampling. Where we talked about stratified, systematic, and clustered. which is also called multi-staged.